Is your view that there is a war being waged on women in the Arab world? Who is waging the war in your view?
Well, I think it's a misogynist society.
In your essay you say, quote, Islamist hatred of women burns brightly across the region.
I mean, when 12-year-old girls are dying giving childbirth in Yemen, when 91% of Egyptian girls and women have had their genitals mutilated, when 16-year-old girls in Morocco are forced to marry their rapists so that their rapist can escape conviction. For simplicity's sake, the 22 countries of the Arab League. Some of them are as rich as, say, the United Arab Emirates and Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and some of them are as poor as Yemen and Somalia. The thing that unites the Middle East and North Africa, or the Arabic-speaking countries of that region, is this hatred for women that plays out differently. So whether you're incredibly rich, or you're incredibly educated, or you're incredibly poor and not educated, you're still suffering as a woman. Most Arab countries, I think if not all, don't have laws against marital rape, and very few of them have laws against domestic violence. So even when women's lives are threatened, regardless of class now, look at, for example, the World Economic Forum publishes annually the Global Gender Gap Index, where they look at things like education and political opportunity and all of that. They list 136 countries, and 14 of the Arab League countries are in the bottom 36 of that 136. These are not my figures. I did not make this up. We have girls as young as 12 and 13 who were trafficked into marriage with much older, wealthier men from the Gulf countries. This is a documented fact. We have sex trafficking of the daughters of the poor. We are selling our girls to rich men from the Gulf. The women in Tahrir Square, or the women in the various squares, whether they were in Yemen, or in Bahrain, or in Tunisia, or Libya, or Syria, when they looked that dictator in the eye and they managed to get rid of Ben Ali or Mubarak, etc., they then looked, to the right and to the left, and they realized that if the regime oppressed us all, our society oppresses us as women. And this is where our double revolution comes in. So what we've done basically is we started to tackle that political revolution that you say, rightly, oppresses everybody. But where we as women recognize we have to go now, and without going that way, our political revolutions will fail, is that we need a social and a sexual revolution that looks to the right and to the left and says, you oppress me specifically. We need education. We need a different way of thinking. We need, for the women and the men, but I'm focusing on the women because we need to start with them. For the women who are out on the street, so courageously facing down these regimes to take that revolution home. But in order for them to do that, they need backing up. So we need legislation against sexual violence. We need legislation against domestic violence. We need women to actually feel safe and not have their lives threatened.
You need like-minded people to win elections first to get that legislation.
We do. We need people who actually believe in legislation to protect women from violence. But you know how many women are employed in Saudi Arabia? 14%. That's terrible. So we need to increase women's role in the workforce. Okay. We need to have legislation that gives them equality in the workforce. We need to protect them from violence on the street. We need to change curricula that encourages boys to think that they're going to be the only breadwinners, because that is a burden on men, especially in countries that are poor. We need to encourage this idea that men and women together are keeping their homes alive. There's a whole list of things. I've been angry since I was 19, and that anger was first planted in Saudi Arabia. My family moved to Saudi Arabia from the UK when I was 15, and to move to Saudi Arabia as a teenage girl, it was like the lights being turned off. And I understood that as a woman I had two options: to lose my mind or become a feminist.
Okay.
And at first I began to lose my mind, and then I became a feminist. I would like to live in a country that has a constitution that guarantees a high enough ceiling of rights that is up here, that guarantees everybody rights, and doesn't put it so down here that I have to contort myself in order to fit. When we have these kind of discussions, we're all operating within privilege. We're all educated, we can all eat, nobody threatens our lives, okay? Because of that, people forget that there are others who have much, much less. What I'm trying to do in my writing, and when I get this angry, what I'm trying to do is remind people that there are lots of people out there who have much less, who don't have the privilege or the right to sit here on a stage with you to tell you that her father and her mother decides that her genitals are cut, that she, at the age of 16, ends up committing suicide because she has to marry her rapist. Where is the power here? I'm educated, I work, I write, I travel freely, and I believe that privilege obliges me to fight 10 times as hard as someone who doesn't have that privilege. So yes, I'm a liberal feminist, and I'm an extremist liberal feminist because it's unpopular to be a liberal feminist, because we keep pussyfooting around and apologizing for the abhorrent way that we treat women.
You are a liberal feminist who's happy to use illiberal means to advance your agenda.
When it comes to the disappearance of women, yes. Okay. And when you look at the ideology that promotes the niqab, it is the antithesis of feminism. It doesn't essentially believe in a woman's right to do anything but cover her face. And if somebody chooses to be a slave, am I supposed to support that choice because they chose it? What is this fetishization of choice?
You think wearing an article of clothing is equivalent to being a slave?
No, but this is what...
The question is, your means that you're advancing is a ban. Some would say, including human rights groups, that's fundamentally illiberal.
For the greater good of our discussion.
Heard that language before, for the greater good.
There is no foreign paradigm here. This isn't about the West trying to turn Islam upside down. These are Muslims who are facing some of the most problematic areas, which are family law, which are incredibly unjust when it comes to girls and women. Progressive Muslims are the ones who tell conservatives you don't own the religion, that you're not the only authentic types out there.
One of the many reasons why people objected to the foreign policy piece, of course, was the cover, which I've brought here. Yes. And I don't know how many of you can see it in the audience or at home. This is a cover, and there's pictures of the whole little photos here. This is a naked woman who has a niqab, basically a face veil, a veil, painted on her in black.
Yes.
It upset a lot of people.
Yes.
Some would say it's pretty offensive. It plays to all sorts of traditional, Western, Orientalist, crude stereotypes of helpless Arab women.
So many people got so obsessed with this that, you know what, I said in the end, I don't care. And if it upsets you, that's even better. It's up to you to choose where along a spectrum of activism you decide to stand. Because I've already chosen my position, and my position has always been, as long as there are extreme elements in my society and in my culture and in my religion who are willing to basically strip women of as many rights as possible, I will be on that extreme end. What you choose to do with your position is up to you. But I'm hoping that because I'm pulling on this end, it opens up a bit of space for you. You don't have to have the exact same views that I have. You can say, oh, Mona's crazy, she's way out there, I'm not going to be that way out there. But you have to decide. You know, people keep talking about agency. It's up to you to decide where you are. But I have decided to take what many consider an extreme position, and I'm proud of that. What I see my role as being is a provocateur.
Would you describe yourself as an observant Muslim, as a practicing Muslim?
I hate those kind of questions, because I think for any Muslim, the only question is, are you a Muslim? And as far as I'm concerned, if you self-identify as a Muslim, that's all anybody needs to know.
What do you mean by self-identify as a Muslim? It sounds nice. What does it actually mean in practice?
To say I'm a Muslim, that's it. And all you need to know is that I'm a Muslim. And that's essentially what the Prophet said.
You used to wear the hijab, the headscarf.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, did you stop wearing the headscarf because you thought it's not an Islamic necessity, it's not a requirement? Or did you stop wearing it because you thought, I don't care if it's an Islamic requirement, I'm a feminist and I don't want to wear this illiberal, anti-woman article of clothing?
I actually stopped wearing it because I didn't believe it was an obligation. And
do you think Islam goes hand in hand with feminism? Would you call yourself an Islamic feminist?
There was a time when I called myself an Islamic feminist, but I no longer do. Now I call myself a Muslim and a feminist. I stopped when I realized that we would get into these endless arguments of my verse versus your verse. And I didn't want to get into my verse versus your verse, because they'd always pull something out. And then the last thing they would do is, well, you don't even wear hijab. So I was always marginalized just because I was a woman or not wearing hijab. So I don't play that game anymore. Have evolved. And I think the latest place, and I'm sure they're going to continue to evolve. I would hope everyone's views continue to evolve. But my views right now are actually all religions are essentially patriarchal. All of them, because when you look at Christianity, you look at Judaism, you look at Hinduism, I think all religions are basically give a free ride to men. And I think that it falls on the shoulders of women who choose to remain in those religions to fight.
Religions. So let me just try and nail this down. You're a believer in Islam, you're a believer in God.
Yes.
So is God patriarchal? Is it God who's is God misogynistic? There's lots of yeses coming from the crowd.
I haven't spoken to God lately. My challenge now is to think, okay, what is my concept of God if I'm going to continue believing in God? And my concept would be that it is a just God. And if it is a just God, then the way that all religions are practiced right now are completely unjust.
If you had to choose between living under a secular feminist dictator or a democratically elected Islamist government, which one would you choose?
I don't... This is the kind of binary that has taken our part of the world to ruin.
Oh, come on, the woman who wrote Why They Hate Us can't talk to me about binary issues.
Yes, I can. Wait.
The definition of power that you have is different than mine, because power...
If men make all the decisions, that is power. What power do you want?
This is the standardized
that you decide what food you buy in your supermarket? Come on.
You're saying you want women to make decisions. When I talked about earlier women in Islamist parties, you didn't like the decisions they were making.
Well, they were making decisions that empower men at their expense. They're saying things like, like FGM is beautification.
But isn't that one of the problems Dr. Mahan has identified?
She's calling that power.
But I'm saying
that's power to abuse women for men. Why? I will not respect this.
No one's asking you to respect it. I'm asking, is there a clash between empowerment and strict equality?
Women internalize their subjugation, Mehdi. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. When you're a woman who grows up in a society where you understand what you need to say, first of all, to get that tiny piece.
To say that women who don't take the same course as you have internalized their own subjugation.
No, wait.
Some might say the same about you.
This is, what have I internalized? The idea that I deserve to be free? I'm glad I've internalized this idea.
Yeah. You're also an American. On average, 3 women every day are killed by their spouse or partner. When will you be writing a piece in Foreign Policy magazine saying why they hate us about American Christian white men?
The issue for me, my obsession is the revolutions that have begun. Okay. And as I told you, our political revolutions will fail unless we have social and sexual revolutions that push them into the home. Because, you know, a lot of women would write to me and say, but my father doesn't hate me. It's not that simple. It's about men and boys basically being made to be these misogynists because of the culture and the way it's mixed in with religion. To get to that, though, we have to agree as women that we have that right to speak out. We have to agree as women that we have to stop being defensive and politically correct about this. And then we get to the men. But if I haven't even solved any of this, if we're still arguing that women who have no decision-making abilities are empowered, how am I then going to get to the men?